Where is Susan? Where are you? I got at least a couple of people on here that I think are going to want to talk to us.
Yay! I can't wait. I've been wanting to do this for a really long time too. I want to hear from everyone.
Let's see. Oh, here she is. I'll just invite her to be a speaker. So, Susan, are you on board? Hello.
Hello. Hello.
What do you think of the mission burrito?
Pardon me?
What do you think of the obscenity, which is the mission burrito?
I think that it's kind of overblown because I've found burritos that I like better other places that are not in the mission. My favorite go-to burrito has always been the chile relleno burrito at El Farolito, and the last 2 times I went once to the North Beach one and once to the Mission one. The chile relleno has been almost raw, and the cheese wasn't melted. And so, yeah, no. And there's a place in the Silicon Valley, it's family owned, there's 3 of them called Lucy's Mexican Grill, and they have a far superior burrito to anything I've had recently in the Mission. It's Mission style, I guess you'd call it, but they have a chile relleno burrito that it's tightly packed. It's not too huge. It's, they have a delicious avocado salsa that's just right, and the chile relleno in the burrito is melty cheese and a very, tender pepper. And so, yeah, I'm not. I think that the Mission burrito has been kind of overblown and not as good as it has. I mean, in the 90s, the Mission burrito to me, there was nothing comparable. I'd come down to visit family down here and be like, yeah, no. But now, other than La Taqueria, which is a whole different story, they're tacos. But, I don't feel any pressing need when I'm in the city to go, to the Mission, because when I'm in the Silicon Valley, I can go and get a burrito that's just as good.
There you go. So it's 11 o'clock. Welcome, everybody, to the Sunday Brunch Space from the Voice of San Francisco. Our editorial director, Susan Dyer Reynolds, is here, as is our downtown correspondent, Erica Sandberg. I am your editor-in-chief, Mike Egge. And today is sort of an open mic day where we'll be taking questions from folks. And I think there was one person who requested to speak earlier. If he will come back, we can have him on. Otherwise, anyone who is on board right now, request to speak, and we shall speak at you. Or we will continue, provoking a war over the Mission.
People get mad at me because when I go to San Diego, I always come back so excited because I had my Roberto's burrito, and how could you go to those? And they're so good. But
Chaca burrito for breakfast and Roberto's taco shop.
It's so true. It's so true. But here we are in San Francisco. It's gorgeous. It's an amazing day. I just came back from coffee out and about, and I got to watch the beginnings of the Dykes on Bikes event. They were out on Polk and Washington. Took some cute pictures, and the energy is really high. It was really nice.
Nice. Well, that's good. I think it's going to be a good weekend.
Yeah, hopefully not, too crazy.
As long as Iran doesn't strike back at us.
Oh, geez. God. I don't even know what to say about that.
But we weren't supposed to have a war, but now we've got one. On the other hand, this is not a geopolitics focused program, so we won't go any further. But
well, how's the city been? I've been out. So past week, I wasn't on the Spaces event last week. So since then, everything's solved.
Okay. Not really. We've got the highlight of my stuff that I covered was the police commission, where Randy Shaw's person, Pratibha Teki, got the nod from the Rules Committee to be appointed to the police commission. The appointment has not happened yet. It will happen, will most likely happen be confirmed this Tuesday. But it got out of there with a recommendation for her with a 2-1 vote. Supervisor Sherrill voted against it.
What's your impression?
Well, you know, she's done, on one level, she's done the work. I mean, she's been involved in lobbying against more shelters in the area. She's been lobbying against shelter crowding. She lobbied against that one nonprofit that was running the public bathrooms and was allowing their employees to deal drugs, and had that big, I don't know if you remember, this giant blob of excrement that they built up on one corner.
Oh.
It was really horrible. And so she was apparently instrumental in organizing people against that and some other things. So she's done, you can't say she hasn't done the work. And frankly, in terms of impact on the city, it is arguable that the Tenderloin, you know, has issues that need to be responded to quickly. But the reality here is that people on the West Side and Asian Americans are going to feel like they've been told that they're next in line, when at a point where we still have hate crimes in the city, and we still have lots of property crimes that especially target Asian Americans. So it's not a good look. Not to mention the fact that, our person was Marjan, who has been basically politically robbed for several years. I've got people texting me who want to speak, and I don't know if they're logged in. But please do what you can to...
Stephen Martin Pinto just texted me and said request to speak.
Okay, let me invite him then. So hopefully he'll be able to get on board. What is this thing he is staring at in his Twitter profile? Stephen, are you there? Stephen, sound off if you are there. Oh, is that me or is that an echo? Let me try inviting him again. Don't tell me we're going to have difficulties inviting people to speak or co-host if we're trying to have an open mic day. Still not hearing him. So let's see. Or whether we can still see if I can. I'm going to invite him again.
He says he's trying to join as a speaker, but it's not working.
It took me a little while too, so I was a little surprised. I don't know if it's just slow today.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's a problem since we're having a Q&A.
As we're trying to get this sorted out, I wanted to throw something out there. As I say, I just got back from Chicago and seeing, and the outside area, like the suburbs around Chicago too. A couple interesting observations, and you can't do compare contrast. These are not, there is no real apples to apples comparison, but I think it's fun to kind of take a look at what they have versus what we don't have and all of that. I noticed a lot of tents in parks, and more than normal, and certainly more than we have. So it was kind of disturbing to see in Chicago, but it left me feeling a little bit like, well, I'm glad we don't have that right now. That's some progress. But
well, we don't have tents,
interesting.
but I mean, if you've been watching JJ's videos, there's plenty of people just laying on the streets.
Oh, certainly. I would never say that there isn't, but I'm saying like literal like tent encampments in big public spaces, big parks, small parks, big parks. They're all over the place. Oh, certainly. I would never say that there isn't, but I'm saying like literal like.
Okay,
tent.
I'm hearing feedback.
Me too.
Okay, yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I had to log back on with my other account to see if, I've been way late. What can I tell you? Let me see if I can try and get Stephen again.
I don't see him.
Maybe he's logging on and logging back in again.
So, an interesting observation. I mean, I've been sick with pneumonia, as you guys know, and coming back to the city this week. But an interesting observation down in here is that we took the puppy to the dog park today, and there was an area lined with RVs, and it's been that way for several months. And today when we drove by, they had 2-hour parking signs lined along both sides of the street, and an explanation that the no RV parking had gone into effect, and that if you needed help towing or starting your RV, here's the number to call. If you needed a safe parking spot in an RV, sanctioned RV area to get your motor vehicle running and move on, they could provide that, and they also could provide services to help you get back to wherever you came from, basically. And so no messing around down here. And I don't know if you saw that Manny is having Mayor Mahan from San Jose, and the topic of the conversation is what San Francisco can learn from the mayor of San Jose. And I highly recommend that Daniel Lurie attend, because I think what he'll find out is that if you are not tough, and if you do not stand up to these nonprofits, and if you do not stand up to the homeless coalitions and the homeless people themselves who, cry victim, and most are not. They're drug addicts, and some of them are perfectly capable of working. They just don't want to. If you don't stop giving them money and letting them park wherever and letting them sit on the street and get wasted, you're not going to have any leadership in the city until that happens.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem that difficult. From the outside looking in, it certainly doesn't seem that difficult. You just say, no, you're not going to do this. We will not allow this. I've been saying this all along, been reporting on this all along. It is permissiveness. It is, oh God, we're going to scratch our heads. What on earth can we do? Well, if you take action.
And besides, the thing that comes along with that permissiveness, Erica, too, of course, is this sort of, becomes a snowball. A snowflake becomes a snowball, because it's like if you allow one guy to sit there peeing himself and smoking fentanyl, then the next guy comes, and the next guy comes, and the next guy comes. Of course, and that's just, it's just an ugly merry-go-round, and I don't see where anything has changed under Lurie as far as the way they are handling drug addicts. And, once in a while they do a big bust. But recall when Lurie was running, he said, oh, and I'm going to tell the judges to keep people in jail longer. Well, guess what? And that's a quote by the way, from him that's in print. He has no control over the justice system. So that means you have to take it outside the justice system. And that's what they've done in San Jose. Rather than, even though the courts are tougher down here, rather than let it be dealt with in the courts, other than drug dealing, but they let the feds come in and take care of that. And as far as the people, they just don't permit it. They don't allow it. If you're doing drugs, they arrest you, period. You go to jail. If you have warrants, that's the first thing they do. Check your warrants and off you go. And it becomes uncomfortable. And that's why when I'm down here and I see someone, I ask them, where else have you been? And oftentimes they'll say, well, I'm actually not going to stay here because it's too hard. I'm probably going to go to Oakland or San Francisco. San Francisco is usually the first place they mention. So, it has a reputation for allowing things to happen, including overdoses.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say, and people go, oh, well, Los Gatos is so nice. Well, very close to South San Jose and South San Jose and East San Jose I go to quite often because the food is fabulous. And I see more homeless tents and homeless people there. But what I don't see is overdoses. I don't see anyone dead on the street. I don't see people doing drugs openly. It just doesn't happen. And that's the problem. San Francisco has to get a hold of its law and order, what Daniel Lurie promised. And I'm not seeing it. You can't just say, I visit every day. That's not enough. Can't just hold a guy's hand and say, you shouldn't be out here. You need to say, are you smoking fentanyl? Police need to be right behind you. Sorry. That's just, I've been saying this for years, though, and, people say, oh, you're a homeless hater, blah, blah, blah. But now, you're reaping what you sowed, right? Like the kindness and bending over backward to accommodate these people has made it a mecca. And those last few, and I see JJ is here, those last few videos of JJ's were incredibly depressing to me.
I'm going to go ahead and invite JJ just to see if, for no other reason than to see if our invite works. And I see Doug Chan is here as well. Welcome aboard. Because here we are, we're supposed to be having our open mic day, and our invite isn't working.
Good old X. Elon can send rockets into space, but he can't make spaces work.
Actually, a lot of those rockets aren't going into space either.
That's true. They're blowing up.
Let me see if I can invite him the other way. JJ?
So when they are requesting to speak, you can't, like, on your end, it's not allowing you to let him speak?
Well, what's happening is that apparently they're not. Apparently, when I click yes, they aren't coming through.
Hey, hello. How you
doing? Hey, JJ.
There he is.
Hey.
Hey, JJ.
How y'all doing?
Great work as always. Those videos are just so disturbing.
Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm. So how do you feel, JJ, about how things are going out in the streets?
Well, things are still the same way. There hasn't been any type of change up under Lurie's administration. It's still the same thing as when London Breed was in office.
Yeah, that's what it...
Only thing that's different is you don't see the tents because people aren't using the tents anymore. You might see a few of them, but the people are still there.
Why aren't they using the tents?
Because they don't want to be harassed.
Oh, interesting. So if they don't use a tent, then they don't get harassed?
That's what they believe, but there's a lot of them that goes up at nighttime.
Oh, yeah.
And they come down in the morning.
Yeah, and when you and Erica and I were on Julian at night, I remember there were just tons of people sleeping around the Gubbio church.
Yes.
So the OD ratio looks pretty high to me.
Yes, it is high. They're doing it constantly. They're ODing constantly. You just had 2 people that just overdosed and died on Golden Gate Street this morning.
Oh, my
Coroner
Lord.
should be there now.
2 this morning. 2 this morning.
Yes, 2 died this morning.
Yeah, that's why the whole the numbers that are officially coming out about that that overdoses are going down, or there's just around 2 a day. I think it's much higher than that. And I've heard this over and over again. It's much higher. I don't know where these official numbers are coming from, literally coming from, because 2 a day, it's not even morning yet.
Yeah. What time did that
It's
happen?
still in
Were
the
they
morning.
two?
It's not even the afternoon yet.
JJ, did they happen at the same time, or were they two separate incidents?
No, the same incident. They was together.
Oh, my Lord. So, see, there's the old adage, do drugs together, do it with friends. That didn't work out.
Coroners haven't even pulled up yet. They still waiting for the coroners to pull up.
Oh, my Lord. Some of the most depressing things in your videos is when they open the van and there's already people, bodies in the van.
Yeah. Yes.
And so when you're interviewing, when you're talking to the people on the streets, and are they still telling you why they're there and where they're from?
Yeah. They say they're here because it's less enforcement in San Francisco.
Yep. That's a fact.
And they're not from here, right?
None is from here.
So do you think that it's higher than 2 a day?
I believe so.
Wow.
I believe so.
Because it seems like you'll just be out, surveying the area and you just come upon people overdosing. It's so disturbing.
Yeah. It is.
Oh, my God. I just swear. So the official numbers that I get come from the medical examiner's office. You can request more detailed information. But it looks to me like it's more, I just wrote a piece about the Coalition on Homelessness again that's coming out next week, and about Jennifer Friedenbach wanting to hold on to her purse strings for Prop C, and I had the statistics for the supportive housing, and just between January and April they lost 60 people in quote supportive housing. 12 in Episcopal Services, which I think is interesting because they had a puff piece about them in the Examiner this morning.
I was wondering about that.
And then the second most is the Tenderloin Housing Clinic. They also had 12 between January and April that died of overdoses. So that's 24 people between just two multi-million-dollar, quote, supportive housing nonprofits. HomeRise was next after that. Also kind of disturbing, truth be told, Daniel Lurie, at Tipping Point is still donating through Tipping Point to HomeRise, even though he said they watch carefully how they, perform. And in fact, HomeRise is 2024. They did get donations from Tipping Point, despite the fact they're under investigation and have the third most deaths between January and April. And of course, Episcopal Services runs his 875 Bryant as well. So it's pretty disturbing because 12 ODs in a short period of time in quote supportive housing shows you very much that, like I always say, housing first, morgue second.
HomeRise is in conjunction with San Francisco AIDS Foundation.
Right.
San Francisco AIDS Foundation is able to walk in there and knock on people's doors and ask them, do they want harm reduction? But if you're a media or anything like that, you're not even allowed in the building, not even to go see a tenant. A tenant can't even have media as guests.
How did they get such power to do that? Where
that's illegal.
Did they get? Right.
Well, they make their own rules, pretty much.
Right.
They've never.
Yeah, once they have the contract, they make their own rules.
Yeah, they have a contract that says they make their own rules, but maybe perhaps most disturbing of all is that not a single one of these organizations has ever been audited by the city or an outside auditor. They've never been audited. So you just have these ODs piling up. You have evidence from JJ that it's out there, without a doubt, in my opinion, the best street reporter out there covering what's really happening. And Daniel Lurie says it's the videos that are harming San Francisco's, tourism, but that isn't the case. I mean, people are dying. I mean, JJ just happens to be the person out there with a camera that happens to be in the neighborhood, and someone dies in front of him. Just the fact that, I mean, I could literally go drive around all of San Jose right now and not find a single person overdosing on the street. It's just not, it just doesn't happen. And so something's got to change.
So what do you think? Okay, so JJ, you're out. You're out every day. This is your neighborhood. You've got a business out there. What would you do? What is your magic, or not magic, but what would your strategy be? And people ask me this all the time. So I'm going to ask you, what would your strategy be? You're mayor of San Francisco. Go.
My strategy would be is put more enforcement out there and have the police walking around. That's step one. Step two is I'll start looking into these nonprofits who's saying they out there actually doing the work that's supposed to be done, that they're getting these grants for.
Okay, so that's step two. So first one, get beat cops, making sure that they're on the street, mitigating these issues, talking to people, arresting. Like, what would you want them to do?
Enforce the law.
Okay, enforce the law. And the law is no public drug use. You're not actually allowed to use. Sorry, everyone. You're not, according to the law, you are not allowed to use illegal substances on the street, in public, in view. That's illegal.
You have people saying it's not right to arrest someone because they're using drugs. Okay, I get that. I understand that. But still, the law states you're not supposed to be in possession with it, even if you're using it. And that's the part that people don't understand. It's illegal to possess drugs, even if it's for recreational use.
I mean, technically, you're not even allowed to drink on the street. I've seen people arrested in other cities for drinking on the street. So San Francisco, I mean, I could walk down any street in San Francisco right now with an open container and nothing would happen. That's the least of their worries. Right. So, I mean, technically, drugs should be just completely not allowed. I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't know how many more ways I can say it, but it's time to take power away from Jennifer Friedenbach, take her out of the conversation. I think that Daniel Lurie would gain, even though he has, by the way, donated to her in the past through Tipping Point. I think that he would gain an enormous amount of respect if he said, you're out of the conversation. You've had 30 years and you've only made things worse. For her to be, for her to be controlling $1 billion. They've spent $800 million from Prop C, from business taxes. No wonder businesses are suing. Have you looked around? I mean, they got 800 net units out of that. What?
Oh, 100%. It would be phenomenal for him to give her the boot. 100%. It would be, well, not 100%, but certainly people would stand up and cheer. Finally, she's out. I don't know why it's not happening. Make it happen and make it public. Make it happen. Publicize it. It will only do good. It will only do good for your image and for the state of the city. It would only be positive.
Yeah. And I think the other issue here is we absolutely have to have accountability at the contractor level, which it looks like I just got a text from Stephen. He's still having problems. I mean, when you mention it, one of the things that kind of infuriated me when I opened the Examiner, I get infuriated a lot when I look at the Examiner because there's just horrible shill content in there. Episcopal Community Services, they had a horrible scandal with the Granada Hotel, which was a hotel that they had just acquired, and there were still legacy tenants in there, and they turned it into supportive housing. And so you had guest spots in this whole hell of the way they run support housing. And then the same thing happened in the Cova Hotel. It's like there's no learning, there's no improvement. It just happens again and again and again.
And did you notice in that Examiner article that they did not mention at all the fact that there have been multiple overdoses in their buildings, and 12 between January and April of this year? deaths. Not once is that mentioned. Just, the blonde lady that runs it, who's making, $300,000 a year, along with about 6 of her other executives. They're rolling in multi-millions of dollars. Over 40% of their money goes to their salaries, and people are dying inside their buildings.
Yeah. So why are they still allowed to operate?
Well, ask Daniel Lurie. He's still letting them run his building on 875 Bryant, the one that he campaigned on as what he would recreate as mayor, and how successful it was. And it turns out that place, JJ, tell us a little about that building.
That building is horrible. I don't understand how I can sit across from the Hall of Justice.
So, we know that someone was, I wrote a story about it. So there was the whole person that attacked the nurse, right? And there's shootings, I get people all the time asking me what they can do about these off-leash pit bulls that, again, it's not the dog's fault, it's the owner's fault. But, ACC is understaffed. They've only got 3 officers for all of San Francisco. So imagine on any given day, you have 3 vans for all of San Francisco. And so those are disasters waiting to happen. You've got open drug dealing, never mind the bugs, the roaches, it's a disaster. And Episcopal Community Services runs it.
Yeah, I would, if I were mayor, I'm not mayor, but I would literally slice and dice all of those contracts. They're not performing. The end is done. The end is here. It's not near. It's here. And they would all be removed from the city coffers. Gone. It's not that hard. Get rid of them.
Lurie say he sees this every day. He walks around and he sees what's going on every day. I don't think he walked upon an overdose or a dead body yet.
No, I'm sure they would his Rivian would keep going. That's just not something I don't think he wants to see. I just don't think that jumping out of a Rivian that you paid for because you didn't like the last car that the mayor drove, I just don't think it sends a great message. I was not a fan of Lurie as a mayoral candidate. I told you I sat down with him for an hour and a half and left not knowing any more about him than when I sat down, and what his plans were. When I'd ask him about his plans, he'd switch the subject. I kind of saw it coming. But most of all, my biggest problem that I talked a lot about was his deep-rooted connection through Tipping Point to these very organizations. So how do you expect a guy who couldn't bother auditing, HomeRise, and still has a nonprofit that's still giving money to them, even after they're under investigation, how do you think he's going to be the one that's going to set up audits for all of these nonprofits? It's just, if he does, I will say hallelujah. But right now, I am impressed with the fact that he's trying to take some of the money from Prop C. Ironically, they're trying to hold on to their purse strings so tight. But the fact is that there's $97 million that's sitting not used. Give it, let him try something different with it. Let's do some housing that is sober housing. They're against that because, as JJ and I've talked numerous times, housing first means you can't say no to drugs. And that's statewide, by the way.
Exactly.
What is the harm in giving him the money that's not being used to try something new? Because what Jennifer Friedenbach and friends are doing is clearly not working. And JJ, have you ever had any conversations with her?
No, only unpleasant conversations.
You and me both.
Yeah.
And so the other day I saw a video of Gubbio project that you had where an OD happened. Was that a Gubbio client?
Yes. They knew his name and everything.
Wow.
It's amazing.
And
They
you
knew his name and
It's
everything.
horrifying.
And you asked them how they were doing, and what did they say?
They're doing great.
That's what they said in the video. I couldn't believe it. Again, why are these people, they created a contract for them. Why? They weren't even city contractors. They made a contract. What do they have that makes them qualified to run this place? Nothing. Shut it down. It's that simple. Shut it down.
I could not agree more. The solution is in front of your eyes. Shut it down.
Yes.
Defund it. Get rid of it. Say goodbye. You did not work out. Au revoir. Good luck someplace else, but not here.
Yeah, and I guess when the OD happened, so I have another video that I'll be showing this week as well, which is Lydia was called because of all of these people that were strewn out, and the Gubbio project was supposed to be open every day. On a Friday at 3 was closed, and so all the people just started to get around and hang around, and they called her, and she came running over from her multi-million-dollar duplex now in Corona Heights, and she said to them, please guys, can we just not hang around here, please? And the one lady said, oh, you don't care about us, all you care about is your program and your money. So even the drug addicts are onto her.
Amazing.
Oh, I see Stephen can speak now. Stephen says,
Oh, good. Can we see Stephen? You're on.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Hope you're having
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just got a question. It's not anything to do with what you're talking about, although I do deeply care about that. It's something new that I think is kind of interesting. Has anybody heard of this guy, Shiloh Marks? He's going,
yes,
and he's I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to scrub the voter rolls in every county and expose if there's not unregistered voters, but like voters who have either moved or are deceased or who haven't voted in a while. And he's coming up with some very impressive numbers. I guess apparently in San Diego County, there's more voters who haven't voted in quite a long period of time than registered regular voters. And he's finding data like this all over the place, and even in San Francisco. And I think he actually just sued the city and county of San Francisco for not being transparent about the voter roll registration. Has anybody heard about this or know more about this?
Yeah, I didn't know of him before, but he followed me on X yesterday, so maybe we'll try to get him on the show. But yeah, he did sue because they're refusing as usual. I mean, my comment was, San Francisco not transparent with their records. I'm shocked. I've for years fought with them over the Sunshine Ordinance and trying to get records, and have found in many cases it's just easier to go to an inside source because they lack transparency in such a huge way. So good for him if he sues them because they're not transparent.
Yeah. Some rumors that I've heard is that when the city counts the votes, it's done in a location and they hire these people to count the votes. And a lot of them are possibly illegal or undocumented immigrants that are handling these votes. This is a rumor that I've heard. I don't know if it's something that anybody else has heard, but I think I've heard it at least more than once. So does anybody know about the process of how they actually handle the votes, who handles them, what kind of security or voter integrity, election integrity do they have?
They hire contract workers through the Department of Elections every election season, the same way they hire, poll workers.
Okay.
But and there's an application. There's at least some basic vetting here. I frankly doubt they're going to have they're going to be hiring large numbers of people that would actually threaten the integrity of the process.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're seeing at the Department of Elections is a very reflexive, opposition to scrutiny because they assume that everyone is trying to stop one group or another from voting.
Okay. That does make sense.
Yeah, they have oversight. I mean, every city and county has oversight of and people that are different from different organizations that are allowed to come and watch the voting and the counting, and not to say there isn't stuff that goes on, but I mean, San Francisco has a long history of voter fraud issues going back to when Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris and Mohamed Nuru teamed up with his then nonprofit Slug and bust people from Slug in the Kamala for DA van to City Hall so they could vote for Gavin Newsom with Nuru and his buddies looking over their shoulders to make sure they voted correctly, quote unquote. So, I mean, that goes back to, Nuru and Dwayne Jones, who, was the muscle who'd go in and threaten people in their campaign offices. I mean, San Francisco has a long and sordid history as far as voter fraud goes.
So it looks like, though, but Shiloh Marks, if anybody's interested in following him on X, it's SHILOAHMARX. But he's all over the place in California. The San Diego, he's noticing 1.4 million active voters and 1.6 million inactive voters. You're looking at Orange County with a huge number of questionable people on the voting in the voting system. It's all over California. Solano County, you name it, he's all over.
The response to that, though, is that those are probably old people who, for whatever reason, they're either dead or, and if they don't vote in another 10 years, supposedly they won't get removed from the vote from the rolls, or there's somebody who hasn't voted for a while, and they don't necessarily want to put those voters in a situation should they decide to vote again, where suddenly their credentials are gone. That's the problem. And frankly, you would think that there would be a better technological solution to that.
Yeah.
The main issue that I've found with voting in San Francisco is what you basically described. What Neuro did is, I don't know if I would call it voter fraud as much as I would call it compulsory voting.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Where basically you're going up to, say, the clients of nonprofits, in particular in monolingual immigrant communities, and saying, and if they have citizenship and they're registered to vote, and they're like 75 years old and don't really want to come out of their apartments and vote, and they're told to, here, I will take your absentee ballot, please fill it out, and then they take it to City Hall and they file it. I've seen that happen. I have seen, and of course, you got people who are motivated to come out and vote because, be sure to vote for this guy because he supported us, and as long as they support us, you'll be able to live here safely. It's that kind of stuff.
Well, in that case with Kamala Harris, they literally loaded them up in vans and took them to City Hall, and these were Slug workers, and they did look over their shoulder, and they were pressured, and they said so under oath that they were pressured to vote for Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris. They were also driven to events where she spoke, by Nuru and his crew to listen to Kamala Harris and, be fed a sandwich or something. I mean, it was coercion, at the very least, it was serious coercion.
Yeah. And you see it on a hyper local level too, like in Portsmouth Square. During election season, you'll see the elderly Chinese ladies sitting in the middle of Portsmouth Square, and everyone is waiting for their box of food, but wearing Aaron Peskin caps. It's just the optics are really crazy. It's really kind of fascinating.
Yeah, Aaron's had that up his sleeve for a very long time, even back with Rose Pack.
Yep.
When she got mad at Ed Lee. Those are the times.
Yeah, but it's interesting, and I'm glad this guy is doing this. I think he's on a roll. People are pretty excited about his diving into it and filing lawsuits, and great, clean it up. Sure.
Yeah,
cleaning up is always a good thing.
I agree. I think election integrity is one of the most important things you have. And I know personally, I support the idea of some kind of voter ID. It's not unprecedented in other countries, developed countries. It's not, I don't think it's unconstitutional. And I think it would go a long way to like making sure our elections are secure. And a lot of the arguments come by as well. There's no proof of like this being a widespread issue. But I mean, why wouldn't you want your elections to be secure? I mean, it's a vulnerability, and vulnerabilities, they always get attacked.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm interested to see where this goes, and I hope it leads somewhere.
Mm-hmm. I do too. Hey, listen, because you're on the phone, what are your impressions about how the city is going? Are you seeing anything positive, or do you think that we're going in the right direction? Are you seeing progress? Are you seeing regress? Standing still? What do you think?
I'm seeing, I feel like Daniel Lurie is doing a lot of things that London Breed would never have done.
Such as?
Well, I think he's being a little bit more aggressive in going after some of the, in my opinion, some of the nonprofits. And I think he is actually a little bit more willing to fire people or lay off people that, that the city needs to lay off. I think with London Breed, she had a lot of conflict of interest with a lot of different individuals. She couldn't really, there wasn't really she didn't really have that ability to fire people or to cut funding to nonprofits because they were all her friends. And the reason why I was a little bit more optimistic about Daniel Lurie is because he was an outsider. He came in and he could dispassionately fire people who needed to be fired, cut funding to nonprofits that needed to have their funding cut. And there was no crony connection there. There was no relationship, or there was less of a relationship. So, I'm a little bit more optimistic about Daniel Lurie than I would have been with London Breed. And I think also it's just kind of a shot across the bow of SF government is, we're not going to just automatically elect incumbents anymore, although we kind of certainly did in some areas, but it's the people, they wanted some change. And I think the, London Breed no longer being mayor, it kind of puts an end to the Willie Brown dynasty as well, in my opinion. So I think that's another important thing that is that happened. As far as the homeless situation goes, I work in Bernal Heights now. I don't work in the Bayview anymore. And, from what I've heard anecdotally from some of my other firefighters is the Tenderloin has gotten a little bit better, but the mission has gotten a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Weeze Alley, which is right there by the 16th Street BART station, and it's just a disaster. And they're kind of playing whack-a-mole, really, is what it seems to be. Is they're taking care of the Tenderloin because it's obviously had a very bad reputation for a very long time. So, it's kind of like the city thinks, well, if we can solve the Tenderloin and make it seem better, then people will be fooled into thinking that the city is better. But it's compensated for in the decline of quality of life in the mission, which nobody's really talking about yet, although they're starting to. So I don't know. I'm a little bit more optimistic about Lurie than I was about Breed.
I would argue, though, that he has not defunded a single nonprofit at this point.
Yeah, and I think you would know better than I would, because obviously, you keep a closer eye on this. The one thing
he hasn't.
Okay, and the one thing I will say about Daniel Lurie is I just wish he was more assertive, and he's not tough enough, And
I think he needs to go to Manny's and listen to what Matt Mahan has to say when Manny does his interview with him, which is titled "What San Francisco Can Learn from the Mayor of San Jose." He needs to. Again, I will just say I'm not a fan of Lurie's. I wasn't in the beginning. I think he ran a dirty campaign. He lied about not being an insider. His wife has worked for Gavin Newsom for over 20 years. They're very close. They go on double dates. This is hardly an outsider. He worked with Mayor Lee, and as I've written before, the Super Bowl 50 happened and he created Super Bowl City, he actually is the one who, because of that, pushed the homeless to division, which created the first, what I wrote in 2016. I wrote a story called The Leevilles, because it basically pushed them all into tents on division. And I remember one day driving down division, and maybe 2 weeks later driving down, and there were tents everywhere, just out of nowhere. And and he promised $300 million to rectify that situation, but that never happened. I don't see him as an outsider. He also has a very deep connection to all of these nonprofits, because through Tipping Point, he donated to all of them and is still donating to them. And so I don't see him as an outsider. He has not defunded a single nonprofit, nor has he done a single audit, which he promised to do, or maybe not promised, but he said that he wanted to hold them accountable. We still have the Coalition on Homelessness running the show. He's made a little bit of, effort saying he wants to take that money that's been sitting there, the $97 million, and do something different with it. But that, is going to be a very hard fight, because Jennifer Friedenbach is going to hold those purse strings very tightly. If he really, really was serious, he would just completely remove her from the conversation, and he would fight to get her removed through a conflict of interest and ethics issues from having any control over the money, because she lobbied for Prop C. And so for her to now be in control of the money that she lobbied for, and also, by the way, turning around and suing the city, to me makes that even a bigger conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So there's many ways that I think that Daniel Lurie, could get her removed from this board, because I can think of about 5 off the top of my head that would make her, being on that commission overseeing the money, a huge conflict of interest. And so she should go, and her buddy Kristen Evans should go, who was appointed by the supervisors, but really by Dean Preston as a reward for helping him buy and hand out tents in the hate. Those people have to go.
But here's my question, Susan. Do you think that it seems to me that Jennifer Friedenbach, she doesn't have the status that she used to have?
That's what I see too. That she's either gone underground, but I don't see the same level of intensity, not just from her, but her fans seem to have been very much tempered.
Yeah, and I think I'm seeing, like, when there was that Grants Pass ruling demonstration, I think it was last year, on 7th Street or something like that. I saw a ton of signs saying defund the homeless industrial complex. And of course, there was J. Connor Ortega, who held up a sign next to Jennifer Friedenbach.
Yes.
Not what it said exactly, but, she was played for a fool. And, I feel like, a decade ago, Jennifer Friedenbach, like, occupied this, like, almost saintly status, like she was unquestionable. She was like the de facto expert on everything homeless. You couldn't, like, she was viewed with perfect integrity. And now I'm seeing like the golden statue or the golden calf has fallen. People are calling her on her bullshit. And that demonstration that Grants Pass ruling was the first time I ever saw anybody, like, people en masse just protesting. I mean, when I talked about the homeless industrial complex in my camp, in 2020, I got, like, booed and jeered at for that. But now it's become almost like a common thing to say, and people aren't really afraid to say it anymore. Not only are they not afraid to say it, they know about it and they want to talk about it.
I could not agree more.
I started writing about her in 2015. I was writing about her. I was calling it the homeless industrial complex. I called her the CEO of the homeless marketing company of San Francisco. I made fun of the fact that all they do is, buy Sharpies and because that's what they used to do is, write on boards. But what I'm writing in this column coming out this week, what makes her more dangerous now is her access to all of those funds from Prop C, and the fact that she has a complete stranglehold on being housing first, and then the fact that nothing is happening in there. She's saying she wants permanent supportive housing. Okay, great. Well, where is that going to come from? She's only had 700 to 800 net units in the past 2 fiscal quarters. So tell me how that's doing anything, and yet she won't give up purse strings.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, that has to happen before anything else. I mean, when I wrote the story about her former colleague that helped her get her start, it pretty much was the beginning of the end for her, because he absolutely said on the record that she was handing out, residency to people that stepped off buses with a letter. That's one thing that Daniel Lurie did step up and say that's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is, because he talks about things and then you never hear anything else after that. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. But he did say that wasn't going to happen anymore, that a letter from Jennifer Friedenbach was no longer going to get you residency and $700 a month. But I don't think that her power is what it was, because I can remember when I first started writing about her, I would get her fans would write me and just go. I mean, I have emails that would just be, couldn't even repeat them on here, the things people said. But now I don't, not so much. Now people say, well, gosh, thank you for, showing her for her true colors. But the fact is that that's not enough. I can keep writing about her, but at some point, the authorities, the leaders have to say enough is enough. She's been as I pointed out, she has had every mayor listening to her from Gavin Newsom on, and although Breed was not that interested in what she had to say, that I can tell you, but somehow she still managed to be around the periphery, and but I do think that they're getting sillier and sillier with the things they're saying. Now the RVs are going to be against Sanctuary City. What in the world are you talking about?
Yeah. The one thing I will say is, the RV situation, like last year, there was a big fuss because all the RVs were moved over to Zoo Road, right by Lake Merced,
which she helped with.
Yeah. And then, Matt and I, Matt Piscetto and I, we both kind of like, Matt, he talked about that from one angle, because, I guess they broke into some city property with the help of Friedenbach and possibly Myrna Melgar. And I actually went and talked to the people who live in the RVs, and I found out some very interesting things. But the one thing that, like, I think, there hasn't been a whole lot of visibility on that lately, because all the RVs have moved from Zoo Road. But, I walk around Lake Merced every now and then with my dog, and I still see tons of RVs over there. They just moved from Winston to Zoo Road. Now they're on Lake Merced Boulevard and John Muir Drive. I mean, they really haven't. It's a big shuffle, is what it is. And a lot of them, when I talk to them when they're over on Zoo Road, they're people from Brazil, Venezuela, Nicaragua. They're here working for Uber Eats, DoorDash, etc., driving under fake accounts with fake licenses. And this is something that I think needs a lot more attention. Is like, I don't know. I mean, it's just like you want to talk about like, sanctuary cities and all that, and that's great. But what is a very real risk of having a policy like this is now you're getting like a Uber driver or DoorDash driver, or whatever, who may not even be licensed to drive in the United States, and may not even know the rules, and you may be getting when you get your food delivered, it may say that you're getting it from one person, but it's actually some other person,
Yeah, that's true.
I've heard this a ton of times where, I've never really used Uber Eats or DoorDash, but it'll say like some guy is going to deliver your food, and then it turns out to be like a lady, or vice versa. So it's obviously the system is being abused. And,
I will tell you that I had one Uber driver several years ago that she didn't speak any English. She told me that in broken English, Spanish, that she had just come from Colombia and was living with her mother in Walnut Creek. And this was her first day driving Uber, and she came to the city. And I am not kidding you. John and I were in the back. She went down 2 one-way roads, 2.
Wow.
And I had to guide her to get to where we were going because she couldn't read the navigation. It was I mean, so it has. I mean, it has become an issue, and frankly, now I'm much more comfortable taking. I actually take, as much as I bitch about it, I actually take the Muni quite a lot. But I like Muni, and and at night if I'm somewhere like when Erica and I will be out at dinner late or something, I prefer Waymo. I just prefer a nice quiet ride home.
Yeah.
One of these days, I'm gonna have to tell the story about my deaf Uber driver.
Oh no!
Oh
yes.
We can have a full episode on. I had a guy who had Tourette's syndrome.
What?
No.
And that was fascinating. I mean, it was a wild journey. Let me tell you. He also had a book in the back of his car for purchase. My life as a Uber driver with Tourette's, and I got in the car. And sorry if anyone's got sensitive ears for this, but I got in the car and I said hello, and he goes, "Fuck you!" I was like, "Oh my god!" And we had a long conversation, but it was peppered with "fuck you, fuck you." Like, okay.
The guy wasn't driving a Subaru WRX, was he?
Honestly, I can't remember. It was years ago. I just remember coming back and just cracking up. Who knows? It could have been a performance art piece, but it was wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, the problem that we have now is that we're creating new jobs and new types of economies that, I think maybe bleeding off from the original sort of policy intent of what our current lack of immigration policy is, which is we originally want these people to do jobs that most citizens are just unwilling to do, which is primarily in agriculture and in construction. But now we had this interregnum in between the adoption of automated cars, where we've created this whole class of unregulated cab drivers, and delivery people, which is
there's actual Facebook groups where you can rent a profile, rent it out today, go to work today, drive today, and it's somebody showed me this. It's like a bunch of ads, and it said it's a part of this group called Venezolanos en la área Bahía, Venezuelans in the Bay Area, and the name is constantly changing because it's like as soon as they get discovered, they'll delete their account and reform under another name because they want to keep it kind of ahead of accountability.
You want to stay under the radar.
Yeah. But they had full-blown ads that somebody showed me of all these different ads, and no license required. Just
oh my god,
it's crazy. And my wife and I were kind of commenting on the explosion of just all these scooters and everything that happened within the last 5 years. It just kind of happened suddenly, and you kind of got to wonder who are these people, and where do they come from, and are they and also these ads would say you can rent a scooter also, basically account included, scooter included. So these
absolutely the same thing happens in New York. You can finance a scooter, and you can get off the especially if you're claiming asylum, in which case all of this is above board. You get on the street in New York City and you would immediately get a free week in a hotel and be able to rent or finance a scooter and immediately start working.
Yeah.
And on that level, where the asylum system is working, or working at least in that way, technically they're legal. Technically they're working on a way up out of the system. But once you start going, further to the left of that, how do you keep track of things, etc.?
You don't.
So there's a concern there.
Well, in the city, there's a whole thing too that I've been looking into, which is these scooters. They're bigger, scooters. Some of them more motorcycle style, but they'll just park in front of. For example, when I took my friend to Kaiser for surgery on Geary, we couldn't park because there were so many of them parked in the passenger loading zone. And guess who they were delivering to? Employees at Kaiser.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Um,
the main, so I keep saying the word moped. How many people remember when this was more and more common use?
yes.
Definitely.
Okay, so basically in the 70s, there was this importing of these lightweight motorcycles that had like really small engines, and they also had pedals. And so they were called mopeds. They were produced by companies called like Motobacan, and Vespa even made some, and Puch of Steyr, Daimler, Puch, etc. They made a big one with almost like a 125cc engine that looked like a motorcycle, except that it had pedals. It's called the Magnum. And you know, these things, you know, you would buy them, and in order to get them, you didn't really need a license. You would just send a card into the DMV saying, "I have this now, and I'm operating it safely," and that's how these things are regulated. That's my understanding.
That's
You know,
funny.
as long as they have pedals on them, and with electric engines, it's even worse because the torque and the acceleration of the electric engines is much more than the gas engines.
And now you've got that with the electric bikes.
Right. Yeah, that's basically it.
No helmets, zipping on the sidewalk. I almost got run over by one twice now on Embarcadero. One of the kids looked like he was 12 with no helmet. And, you know, okay, but that's like really the least of the issues, I suppose. But
who here watched the HBO series Westworld?
Not me.
I did not. No.
Okay, well, all right. There was the movie where everyone was in the simulated Western scenario, but then the next series, the next couple of seasons of the show, transported into the robots from the park were in the real world, and the real world of the future was very much like sort of these emerging not necessarily emerging technologies, but emerging uses that we're seeing. Like one big part of the plot was that they had this illegal app that would allow you to sign up to work on different capers or crimes, and then you would, you know, rent your bike to do it, and then do it, and then get paid over via you know, your blockchain-based currency. And it was
That sounds like San Francisco.
Yeah, and it was gamified, so you get more points for every job you'd get through the app, and so on. It's quite amazing.
Well, I want to know something. So we've got people out there who are listening in. I would love it if anybody wants to jump in and say, is there anything that you've seen in your neighborhood or when you go to work and you're around your place of work that is particularly positive, or negative, where you think, oh gosh, this has not been, I haven't seen a story about this yet, or I want to highlight this. I would love to hear.
See if we have any other.
One of the things that really bothers me is I don't like living in a silo where I'm just constantly, I write about what I think needs to be told, but I can't be everywhere at once. Susan can't be everywhere at once. So I think it's so important to listen to people who are, you know, I'm not out in Bernal very often. In fact, almost never, or West Portal, or gosh.
I'm in West Portal pretty often, and I will say it's one of my favorite neighborhoods, except for the construction. There's that George's Donuts, when I was doing my little review of Kruller's, turned out to be a bust. I don't know what people think is so great about that place, but across the street from it, we accidentally discovered a fantastic sushi place. So that's like my favorite thing about, you know, neighborhoods in San Francisco, is that you just wander down the street and you're looking for one thing and then you find something else. And so we actually took Stanley Roberts and his wife Diane there for her birthday. And just, you know, so I've discovered something new just from wandering down the street. So I really love West Portal. It's pretty charming. It's pretty close by, and we just hop on the bus and go. So, and
we do accept letters to the editor. So if you don't have the energy for a 500-word op-ed, we haven't gotten a lot of letters to the editor. We've gotten a couple that we printed, but you know, if you want to give your voice or give any tips that way, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Yes. I would like to say that my last visit to the mission was probably the worst I've ever seen it. I came home to the sunset and said, "Oh my God!" I hit the cat. I just literally fell into the chair and said to my friend, "I don't even know how I could never live in the mission. I could not."
The politics appear to be even more intractable than they have been in the past.
It is so bad. I want everyone to get on their e-bike and get out there. You should see it. I always say, don't just believe me or anybody else.
Okay.
Go look at it for yourself and say, is this the San Francisco I want? Would I live here? Is this okay? How would you feel? Honestly, just it is beyond appalling. Beyond.
Okay, we have. I can talk more about that. We have a request to speak from someone named Truth and Truth.
Nice.
So let's go ahead and see if they can get on and start talking. Are you out there?
I see them.
JFB Truth, are you out there to speak to it?
I just took yes, absolutely. I just took a e-bike, and I was just in the and I'm still surprised I'm alive.
Oh, honey, baby.
I've been going to San Francisco for the last 40 years, so I'm going to age myself a little bit. And I love, it's probably one of the most iconic, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I'm a U.S. Forces family, so we've been posted all over the place.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and God bless our country, by the way,
Yes.
today. So and the thing is, I've got a lot of friends in the area. I've been also working in that area for many, many years, and a lot of them, of course, are, just don't. They live in this bubble where they just don't realize what calamity that everything is around them, right? So, I tell them, is it really normal that you're walking around and you have a homeless person coming at you with a knife? Is that normal? Do you think that's a normal way to live? And if you have kids or if you have loved ones, and they look at it and they say, well, this is the world we live in today. That's their way of kind of acknowledging that way of life.
Yeah.
And it's very sad, because you think about this and say, okay, think about California is still the 5th largest economy in the world, right? And when you look at the Bay Area as a whole, I'm in IT, so I got a lot of people in this world that make a lot of money and have a lot of wealth, and yet you hear them talking about, let's go help people in Africa, let's go help people in these third world countries, and those are good causes. But what exactly is going on in their brain, right, that they can't help the people next door to them?
Oh my gosh.
Right? And this is the problem that we're living in. And I just was in another space, and they were asking me, you've been posted in other countries, and can you tell us a little bit about, why, all these we have all these problems that they exist in these other third world countries. And what I told them is, I said, the weird thing is, by far, we're far richer than any other country in the world. Mm-hmm. And yet we have all these problems that were self-created, especially places like San Francisco, that you don't find in third world countries that have a 100th or a 1/1,000,000th of the amount of money to fund those cities, right? And they don't have all these mental issues and so
drugs.
I just wanted to kind of leave it for your audience here to kind of have, I think it's a great discussion, by the way. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
I think but the point is, why have we created this self-destruction? And I really do think, when you think about everything happening around us, whether it's the bombing yesterday in Iran or all these terrorist groups or or you see these chaotic situations in our cities with riots and everything. It's all part of this sickness that is self-inflicted. And I'll leave it at that and love to comment more.
You know what? I tend to agree on one level that a lot of these problems, especially that we have in San Francisco, come from luxury beliefs. That people who have theirs and who are pretty much insulated by their by their income and their family connections and their social capital, they adopt opinions about society which are based more on their own self-actualization than reality, and they don't understand that affects people's lives.
Yeah. I mean, to some extent, it's, every one of these homeless nonprofit CEOs or the big boosters of it, I dig into, I find out they're from a trust fund family, right? So Jennifer Friedenbach comes from Almond Farms. She's an heiress to an almond farm empire. Her parents have a lovely condo in San Francisco. She has a house with a white picket fence, literally. You've got the Gubbio Project, Lydia Branston, if that name sounds familiar. She was married to one of the grandsons of the MJB coffee empire, which sold to Nestle in 2018. Or 2008. And, when she was telling people on Julian Avenue, I know, I live, quote, in the hood in East Oakland. Well, public records do show she has an address there, but that isn't where she lives, because the address that comes back to her for over 2 decades is over by Julie's Kahn Park in the Presidio, in a $15 to $20 million house owned by her in-laws, or if she's divorced from him now. But the next address that comes back to her is a $7 million duplex in the Corona Heights area. So she can, maybe she keeps a little room over there to look like she's, quote, from the hood in East Oakland. But she's never lived anywhere but let's put it this way. No way in heck would her Gubbio project ever be allowed to open where her in-laws live against the Presidio wall. And by the way, I know a member of her family, who says that the views are unbelievable from her in-laws' home. So this is the woman running, this place in a church on Julian Avenue where she's got drug addicts overdosing in front and, taking the paraphernalia they get from inside there and then going out and using fentanyl underneath the window of 5-year-old girls that live there. So, but that seems fine with her because, when they call her up, she just has to zip across town from her luxury condo and, and then say, oh, please don't do that here. Well, the bottom line is Kristen Evans, her parents have a $12 million home. Her father was the CEO of the largest aluminum company in the United States. So these are the people that are telling you how to run the homeless industrial complex.
Not to mention the trust funders who are, or at least one trust funder who's among the leadership of the communist organization, as well as the United Educators of San Francisco, that appears to be insinuating all these really bizarre policies that get sneaked into school district curriculum.
That was in your newsletter, and you can find the newsletter by subscribing at thevoicesf.org, thevoicesf.org.
This week's newsletter was a hoot because we had one of our regular opinion writers on education had let it slip that, there's some members of the what is it called? The Party for Socialism and Liberation, who are among the board members of the United Educators of San Francisco. And PSL is a very, they're not a socialist group, even though it says socialist in their name. They're not a left, they're not a moderate left group. They're a communist group. They're originally part of the Workers' World Party. They remain attached to International Answer, which is a very, very problematic organization that has been very influential in the current Palestine protests, and they committed that act of piracy over at the port of Oakland, where they almost took out that, not took out, but basically sort of put people on that ship that was a U.S. Navy auxiliary ship shipping cargo around. It wasn't even going to Israel, and they tried to stop it with their people. And they do all sorts of crazy things and radicalize ignorant people. And one of them is a vice president of our teachers union. And it turns out that she is also a trust fund baby type. She's the daughter of a Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur type, Stuart Alsop, who may actually be related to the original journalist Stuart Alsop, in which case I'm going to be very mad.
So this is why the more you know, the better. It's very easy to kind of skate on the surface of these issues and not see who's who, what they're affiliated with, what their backgrounds are. You really should know. And it's really frustrating to know that a lot of people don't dig in further. But I would be remiss if I did not hit with this, because I'm so upset about, and I'm so appreciative of the last caller who mentioned this, which is it's so easy to look elsewhere, get your eye off the ball, but not see what's happening in your own neighborhood, in your own community. And why is that? Now, we have I'm going to make people mad, and I'm sorry, or maybe I'm not. We have a genocide going on. You want to see what it is? Walk outside, because it's on our front stoop. It is here. It's not overseas. It's here. This is a genocide. There are people being wiped out of existence because we have allowed the drug cartels to take over. We have allowed the nonprofit organizations to just to make it easy for people to kill themselves. It is appalling. And here it is. But the good people take their eyes off of what they're seeing and say, oh, I'm going to look outside the country to find a human crisis. What the heck? Why? Why is this? Why can't you just look down and get as angry as you should be? It's a fascinating question. I'm not sure I'll ever fully understand why that refusal to look just at on your very own streets.
I don't know if any of you saw the video that I can't remember which one it was. I think it was SF Citizen, of the woman laying in the middle of the road screaming, and the police come and she's running from them and she's screaming at them, and then she pushes over a guy on his scooter, she pushes over a guy on his bike, clearly on drugs and strength beyond her normal self, but she's screaming and yelling and telling them. The weirdest thing is she's screaming namaste, which is just bizarre. And then she goes and lays on Market Street, lays in the middle of the road. And so, naturally my question is, how is that playing in Division Zero? Because she's not the only person who I've seen laying in the middle of the road. But I'm not talking like off to the side either. I'm talking about twice she goes and lays sprawled out across the lanes of traffic, and the police are trying to catch her, and she's running around. And it's so frustrating that, like you said, Erica, that because in this video you'll see people just walking by, walking by.
They're walking by on their way to a protest.
Yeah, right.
Here you go. Yeah, here, protest this. You're here. It's so, and here's something that you can actually have an impact on. You can make a difference here.
Yeah, no one shows up to the city hall meetings
don't.
about this stuff, but they show up when it's,
That's right.
Dean Preston, when he used to, and Jackie Fielder, I'm just going to say it. She's the most useless supervisor. She makes, Hillary Ronan look like a great supervisor, and we know she wasn't. So, she would not condemn the anti-Semitic threats that were, spray painted on Manny's, that were aimed directly at Manny. That she absolutely has nothing to say of value about what's going on in Julian Avenue. She hasn't even visited the families there. She's an absolute waste of space. And, you get what you vote for, but we know that probably most of her votes came from the white privileged, folks up in Bernal Heights and not from, people in the Mission, but not to excuse them because they probably didn't come out and vote in the numbers they should, and they get what they voted for, but she's useless.
She's
Somebody needs to step up from the portal and run, or put together a ballot initiative to secede the portal from District 9.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. Just when the Bernal Neighborhood Association didn't get the endorsement they wanted from their votes because they wanted Jackie, and so they had to redo the votes and I'm sure twist them in some way so that she came out ahead of Chandler. It just, the whole thing is, Trevor, would have been a breath of fresh air.
That's where the real voter fraud happens in San Francisco, is in the endorsing organizations.
yes.
Yeah, I agree. Just the whole thing. I remember London Breed saying she wasn't going to come to a debate. And then I get this text from a friend of mine, and she says, "Oh, I'm at the Noe Valley Neighborhood Association monthly meeting at such and such bar, and London Breed is here." So it was more important for her to go kowtow to the neighborhood association than it was to do a public debate.
Yep.
Hey, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the time here. It's 12:30.
It is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't want to miss out on anybody else who wanted to speak, but I do have to go pretty soon. Is there anybody else who...
Let's do a last call.
Yeah. Last call for alcohol. Oh, I used to be a bartender.
I'll just leave a little comment here. This is Truth again. I think I have to tell you guys, this is a little humorous, but when I first saw this space and then I saw San Francisco, I was like, oh, I'm definitely getting kicked out of this space. And I thought, they're all, this is, how do these loonies here are going to totally kick me out. But, here's the thing. And I really believe that we're in a critical time right now, because it is kind of depressing. I think Erica mentioned it earlier. You go outside and you see all the damage. I travel a lot, spend a lot of time. I'm actually in California right now, so Southern California, and it's San Diego, by the way, is looking really bad. Downtown San Diego. Oof. Watch out if you eat out down San Diego. If you eat in a restaurant outside, make sure you know where your wallet is and your stuff. Because I just saw a homeless guy. He just basically grabbed a bottle of wine. These people were drinking.
Oh my God!
And it was kind of humorous, but he grabbed the bottle of wine. He took off. You're like eating outside. It's like, it's just crazy. But so the point that I want to make is that, for some of you here that are there in media and I think we need to, the moment you start talking, I talk to, like I mentioned earlier, I have a lot of these friends are Democrats, radicals, and they're friends of mine. We have barbecues, we go out together, we eat. I try to refrain from not getting to politics because then it always goes south, right? But they're friends, and I've known a lot of them for a long time, and we're friends, and we get along. But their lives are, and they're so messy. The moment you start talking about their lives, forget about politics. You start talking about their lives and how they're dealing with their kids or their family members. It's like, it's really crazy. I mean, it's like, I'm like, I don't need to go to the movies, guys. I just need to talk to you guys about your family. It's like entertaining. But so the point that I'm trying to make is that I think if we change the conversation, and this is one of the things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to refrain from politics, but change it to, common sense, things that makes, like you pointed out this crazy lady running down the street, yelling namaste and attacking people, and that's pretty much what's happening. They're so crazy in their brains and in their selves, then they're so self-consumed that they think we're totally evil. I mean, think about it. President Trump, by far not a perfect human being, but he was almost assassinated, right? And if you I believe in God, and I believe that he was saved for a reason, because I can only imagine where we would be right now if he wasn't president, right? If Kamala was president. By the way, I know Gavin personally, and he's another one that's just completely out there. It's so the point that I'm trying to make is that I think what we need to do is bring the conversation back to family values, truth. One of the things, there is such thing as truth, right, in everything, and we teach that. If you have kids, you have family, you teach that to your kids. There is such a thing as, you make a mistake, the best thing that could happen is your daughter or your son, it goes to you. You're the parent, and they have that trust, and they say, "Mom, Dad, I made this huge mistake, and as big as it could be, all of us, we're not perfect, right? But the worst thing that can happen is that now those mistakes become a good thing, and let's just accept them and live in those mistakes, whether it's drugs, whether it's, total chaos sexually. Let's just experiment with everything out there. And today I feel like a boy, tomorrow I may feel like a woman, and who knows what I'm going to feel next, right? And this is a total breakdown of society. And I think the way I see it is driven by some of these countries. We're driving a lot of it, and we're sending a lot of it to these third world countries, which is really sad, right? Because I'm seeing, I travel overseas, and I see these third world countries that are vulnerable because they look at us as the beacon of light, like Reagan used to say, right? The beacon of light. And now we're the beacon of darkness. And I'll leave you with this. Just think about this. Hollywood, LA, and I'm actually going to have to be in LA, so please pray for me. I have to go to LA on Monday, tomorrow. LA is the center of child trafficking worldwide. Let's just think about that for a moment. The media has not brought up to it. I actually have some friends that are asking me to help them. We're trying to put together a team to do some more research. I helped Sound of Freedom and Jim Caviezel, and now they're considered like these radicals, and which they're not. They're like incredible human beings, by the way. But that's how attacked they are, because this is, and I'll give you a number, and it's going to be staggering. It's over. At first, they thought it was like $150 billion business, which is massive. They're now saying that it's over half a trillion, over $500 billion of business worldwide in just child trafficking, where most of the kids, and I don't want to make you sour Sunday, but this is the reality, right? We, the grown-ups here, all of us, we're responsible for those kids.
Where is your evidence on this, though?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we Jim Caviezel.
So, wait, before we go into this, I want to say goodbye. I have to leave, and I hate to leave in such a fascinating part of our conversation, but I've got to go.
We'll be back.
Love you guys. Thank you so much. I love hearing from everybody, and have a great Sunday.
See you next week, Erica.
You bet.
Yeah, Erica.
Bye, darlings.
Anyway,
so great question that you asked, VOSF, and I didn't get your first name, but great question. So I've been helping Sound of Freedom, and at first, initially, I was kind of the same thing, right? I was like, this can't be that big, right? And we were talking about, this is like 3 years ago, we're talking about $50 billion, and I said, no, there's no way. This is an exaggeration. There's no freaking way it could be that big. And the more I learned from these sources, which are, by the way, I have a very good friend of mine that is in Border Patrol now. He's in ICE, and he's an incredible human being. He's got 6 kids, and he saw a lot of this firsthand. So he's given me a lot of this information firsthand. And so the craziness is
Why
that
hasn't the public seen more of this?
this is if you believe in true evil, I tell you it's evil. And the part of the reason is that the public is not seen is because these powerful organizations, I'm talking about cartels dedicated to child trafficking, have so much power, so much influence that they've withheld and they've bought people that have withheld that information. So, and I'll encourage you to do this. If you're really interested in finding out more about this and seeing it for yourself, if you can go to Tijuana, okay, and make sure you have some bodyguards. But if you go to Tijuana, go out at 11 o'clock at night, midnight, and you will see on the streets, you will see kids that are as young as 5, 6, 7. You can get access to those kids. This is how insane this is. So the sound, part of the way they did the movie, The Sound of Freedom, if you haven't seen, if people haven't seen it here, please go out and see it. You can see the link on my website, on my profile.
The problem that I have here is that you're basically you're repeating something that I have always, and you look at most of it, it's lore, it's not facts. And
no, there are facts. There are facts, and I'll tell you where the facts are. And I know I was as skeptical, if not more skeptical, than you are right now, because what we want to do as human beings, right, is we feel like when we hear something that's so crazy, we're like, how's it possible that this is going on? How is it possible? But think about this. Just think about this for a moment. You can look back and you can see the media was not able to cover this. They found several containers in Texas with kids that were fried in containers, locked. Okay, and these kids were all ranges. The ranges ages were 5 to under 12 years old.
Okay, I need to stop you there. I can't go on with this. This is not.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, and again, so I don't know if we're going to have another one of these again, but if we do, I think what I would love to do is say, especially keep it to local people that we know are local to San Francisco, and relevant to what we're talking about.
Yes, agreed.
But on the other hand, we did try to listen, or at least I tried.
Yeah. His first comments were very sensible, so
that's just it. And I think I hate to do this after cutting him off, but in many ways, I see a similarity between what we've just experienced and what we experience with many people in City Hall, where people adopt "quote unquote" facts that adjust to their worldview, and they base their actions on who they vote for, etc. on that. But otherwise, they're perfectly rational people.
Yes.
Some of them are even lovable people. I think it's a question of their self-identity and their self-actualization and what comes to them first. And I think it's an issue that needs to be solved on a societal level. And I don't know how the hell to do it. But that certainly is what's happened with politics in American society.
Yes.
And why it's become so personal and vituperative.
And this is why, as an opinion writer, I read other opinion columnists, and I'll just throw it out there. Heather Knight and her story about Proposition K and the Sunset Dunes. She's throwing out these numbers. Oh, yeah, they have 7,000 visitors a day. So I did a public records request, and I asked for the emails between Heather Knight and the Park and Rec Department. And they literally just fed her the numbers. They fed her the information, and she printed what they said.
Right.
And so I asked for the raw data. What was the raw data you gave Heather Knight? Well, they didn't give her any raw data. They sent me a single graph that they created. They did not in any way tell me how they came up with the data. when I pushed them on it, and as did Lou Barberini, and asked them, and again, I just want to get to the truth, right? I don't care what the truth is, just give me the truth. And when I said, well, Heather said that, there was data coming from cell phones. Oh, she was wrong about that. So you let the New York Times print something wrong? First of all, shame on you. Also, shame on Heather for not doing her homework, and shame on the New York Times. Are you kidding? Are you kidding me? I mean, in the Marina Times, I always had, and I carry this through to The Voice. If you're an opinion piece, it needs to be based in fact, and you need to be able to back up those facts. So when it comes to things like human trafficking, I wrote a piece about, are the drug traffickers really trafficked here? I requested every single case from the DA's office of human trafficking, and there was one, and it was a maid from the Philippines. So that's just a fact, and I can back that up with the facts from my data. And there's nothing that Hillary Rodin or Melgar could say about it, because it was just a fact. And then I also went in, and there's a website you can go to that details human trafficking from every single country. And I went into the Honduras database and I drilled it down, and it was absolutely not what all of, Chesa Boudin and all of these people always said it was. It absolutely was not. But I have the facts to back it up. So I believe that you do not even write an opinion piece if you can't back it up.
Exactly. I mean, I think part of the problem here on the journalism side, I think, is the rise of access journalism. Where in order to get the stories that people want to read, you have to be able to please the people that you're interviewing or getting information from. And that unfortunately leads to things like what we've seen. I mean, you see it in local public policy all the time, I think, because nobody wants to make somebody else's job look bad. And I think that dynamic is more powerful even on the local provincial side than it is even with national journalism and national politics and national government.
And again, I simply, when someone comes to me with a story like the one I have coming out about Gary Rulli and his kiosks in Union Square, I've spent months interviewing his former employees. I've read through all the emails. He's sent me concrete data. Yes, I wrote to them, 8 years ago that the dumbwaiter wasn't working. And then when Tyler Florence asked to get out of his contract, what did he mention? The dumbwaiter. So, I mean, and I have the email that goes all the way back. So all I'm asking is that if you're going to speak or if you're going to write, you need to have it backed up with facts.
Exactly.
And then people take you more seriously, too. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've never taken Heather Knight that seriously. I can't take someone seriously that just writes off the cuff stuff and makes big statements and then cheerleads for closing down the park and having a park at the beach, but doesn't have any facts to back up. And when I read through her emails between her and the Rec and Park, it was like, the Sunshine Society of Spinderella and her friends at the Rec and Park. Phil's not available, but he'd love to talk to you, Heather. Oh, no, that's not how it works with me. Like, they're not my friends. They're people I need data from.
Right.
And the fact they couldn't provide that data and that the New York Times ran with it's all I got to say. It says all you need to know.
It's amazing.
Yep, and that's just about a silly, so-called park at a beach. Imagine the other stuff that they run with that isn't backed up. It's crazy to me. I mean, they have, millions of dollars, and we're trying to fact-check our work as a little tiny organization. Not trying, we do. And then, you look at the New York Times, and they're not checking their facts. They're just taking the Park and Rec's word for it. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, and it really was, not that hard to do a public records request and to have them just send me a little chart. And that's what the New York Times ran with. Shocking.
Yeah, I think this is what, it happens fairly regularly. And again, I tend to think that this happens with stories where the stakes are a little bit less. It seems like the stakes are a little bit less, but it happens at the local level again and again and again. And before you know it, you've got policies locked in place that has a sort of a manufactured consensus behind it. And I think that is a major factor into our homelessness policy today.
Yeah,
That
I
there are
agree.
so many regular people who base their opinion on reading the regular newspapers that basically say, we're trying, but we don't know what to do. And it's an unsolvable problem. And to take them off the street is mean. So, ...
Or as Willie Brown said, it was never meant to be solved.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember working on that campaign where he basically said, we're going to solve the homelessness problem by dividing up the homeless people into whatever constituencies they came from and let the nonprofits serving those communities help those people and get them back on their feet. And then they found that it didn't work. And he unfortunately declared the problem unsolvable.
Yeah, and that's the mindset San Francisco has had ever since.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
All
Do
right.
we want to go back to talking about burritos, or do we want to pack it in?
I will just say that the Mission Burrito is overrated. That's all I gotta say.
I agree. And if you disagree, let us know.
Yeah, I'll be doing an article about burritos one of these days.
So,
but all I can say is, El Farolito, you need to start cooking your chile rellenos, because the last two I've had, that biting into the chile relleno burrito was like biting into a rock. It's supposed to be a tender pepper, a tender pasilla pepper, please.
So please come visit us at thevoicesf.org. You can subscribe to our newsletter there. You can do you can also do a donation there based on subscription or other ways of donation to keep us going.
Tax deductible,
and you can read our latest stories about the SFMTA board approving the mayor's plan to curb vehicular homelessness, how the California Massage Therapy Council has been failing Asian American practitioners, the whole struggle at the police commission between people on the west side and the Tenderloin, and who got picked on that. And we've got more than a few, how voters are being polled and they're finding out, and their opinion is greatly increasing towards take care of the fentanyl problem, make it go away. And we've also started to cover the anti-Semitism issue a little bit. It seems to be growing in the city.
Yep.
So come visit us and see what we're all about if you have not already. And have a great Sunday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.